2024 was a really hard year for many businesses. Our business thrived. It was our best year yet. We're going to break down today how we made a year that was really hard for many a big success for us, and things that we did a little bit differently that set us apart and helped drive results. Let's dive in. You're listening to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast, where we invite you to check your ego at the app, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to dive into all things real estate marketing, social media, friendship, hardship, love, money mindset, and all the things that celebrate you as a badass boss babe.
We're here to encourage you, show up for you, give you a loving kick in the pants when you need it most, and be your soft place to land on the hardest of days. So pull up a seat at our table and get ready to be inspired and start living your best life by design.
Welcome to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast. We are so excited you're here.
Okay, girls, let's dive in. All right, Bus Bench babes, we're talking all about what the BPR experience did different last year. It was my 28th year in the business, or this is my 28th year in the business. Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy.
So let's be clear. I've not been in the business 28 years straight, but I was originally licensed 28 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I was in mortgages for a while. I did take a little hiatus when the market crashed. We always talk about that. But to say that I was licensed 28 years ago, like when Glenda Baker says, she's been in real estate as long as since Jesus was a baby type stuff. That's kind of what I feel like.
That's a long time, and you've been through a lot. And last year was, talking about 2024, was a really hard year for many businesses, many real estate agents. And it just wasn't the case for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm so thankful for it.
We're so thankful
oh my
for
God.
It. Yeah. And this episode, if you had a really hard year, is not to make you not feel seen or to
not to rub salt in the wound.
No, not at all. But really
to
share things that we did differently and things that we have done differently leading up to this point that made last year really successful. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I heard a stat and it kind of blew my mind. They said last year was the lowest home sales since 1995. And I'm like, what?
When you told me that on our call, I was like, excuse me?
I know. I heard that stat recently and I'm like, okay, that's kind of crazy wackadoodle. You're like, what?
I'm like, really?
But yeah, everything has been on this uphill swing for so long. Mm-hmm. And I feel like every year that's record-breaking year. And apparently it was a record-breaking year for in the reverse. It's in high interest rates, lack of inventory. Mm-hmm. There's all that stuff that sort of plays into it. So
changing who's coming into the market, which we're going to dive into that a little bit more. Who's coming in, who's not coming into the market, as a buyer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that really blew my mind is I sat in, we have this wicked smart statistician guy that used to work for our local real estate board here in the Twin Cities. And now he is operating on more of a state level. But one of our EXP partners brought him in for an awesome lunch and learn. And I hadn't really, so I've only see him on social media, but I haven't sat in on one of his presentations in a hot second. And he's that guy that sort of makes numbers sexy. Mm. And Carrie was with me and she's like, oh, he's kind of like a sexy nerd. But he was talking, so he's breaking down the stats of everything under the sun that you could put a stat to. He was doing that. But it was really interesting that he said the millennial home buyer, kind of that first time home buyer, is also at a really, really low right now.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because you would think that millennials make up such a huge part of our population, but they're literally sitting on the sidelines right now. Waiting for the market to crash, waiting for 4% interest rates to come back. I don't know, waiting for the sky to fall. I'm not sure what that is, why. But none of that's happening. And I feel they're almost missing that opportunity. That window's closing.
It's really interesting because as home prices go up, and you would have to anticipate that wages won't match that. At some point, they're not going to match that, the increase. And you're losing so much money renting. Like we've talked about this.
Yeah, the
so
luxury rentals are stupid expensive.
They're stupid expensive. And so whether or not they're living with family still, whether or not they're in a luxury rental, it's very interesting what's happening there. It's definitely something that I don't think many anticipated a few years ago.
I don't think so either.
And we're seeing the effects of it now.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I've seen with some millennials is like they've decided to like live with mom and dad, like move back in, get rid of that apartment, move back in with mom and dad. But now they're almost like living the high life.
Yeah.
Because mom and dad are at a stage of life where they have like easy street going. Well, and then now like the millennial kids that are living with them are like, well, yeah, we're like living high off the hog. We don't have to pay rent to mom and dad. And, so I don't know that some of them are necessarily getting ahead. It's not like they're living with mom and dad and squirreling away every dollar they have. Yeah. It's like they're living with mom and dad and now they have like bougie cars. They're like living the dream, but it's like, okay, well, like when's the reality going to set in? Like, are you ever going to become a homeowner? And like, what does that look like? And when is that going to happen? Like, are you getting your student loans paid off? So they're like, millennials are like, oh, we're loaded down with student loans. Well, are those getting paid off right now?
So if you're a millennial listening, I mean, I'm an
We're
elder
not bashing
millennial.
you. Yeah.
So like I'm an older, we're not bashing millennials. And this is obviously a generalized statement, but when you look at stats, this is what's happening. Yeah. And
millennials aren't getting into the game right now.
Something interesting, Beth, is not like having as much information on Gen Z coming, which is going to be the next wave, right? The next wave that we're seeing come in. And I have a little story to share with you. I've never shared this with you. So I was at the dermatologist back in late fall, and Gen Z, like medical assistant type person helping me. And they had commented, did not know I was anywhere related to real estate whatsoever. Like, I think I just have like self-employed on my, medical whatever record thing. So this medical assistant was sharing with me that she couldn't believe her friends who were newly married bought a house and it needed a lot of work. And she was like, I'm just living with my parents. And she's like, free food, free rent. I'm like, I have a job. Like, she's doing just fine. And she's like, they're like working on projects every weekend and their house needs so much work and it's not what I want to be doing. I can't believe they're doing this. Was like flabbergasted that this couple would buy a property and put effort into it
to make it be worth more money.
I was like, oh, okay. And she's like, I get, if I just stay home, I get all this like, free rent, free food, free whatever. And I can go do whatever I want. Yeah. And so this is one person, obviously, but it was really interesting because...
So my intuition is ringing true for something that you experienced firsthand.
Yes, yes. And so I'm like, wow, this is, and no judgment. Like it is a choice you get to do. But we need to be aware that this is becoming the reality or is the reality for at least a large portion of these different younger generations, I should say. And in a large enough number that we're actually seeing it as statistic, right? It's not just like something that we're assuming.
Yeah, I think it's crazy that the longer, it doesn't matter what Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Q, it doesn't even matter like what that is. The longer that you sit on the sidelines and don't buy a home, the more expensive it is. And I see so many people like almost pricing themselves out of the market. Another outside of like the young folk generation, I've seen a lot of older people, let's say my generation, that are, and I'm totally going off script. Christy's looking at her notes like, what is she talking about?
I was just like making sure I know what I'm going to talk about next.
Yeah, totally. I'm totally going off script.
We have done shows where, remember you started and I'm like, what are you, we already did that show, Beth. What's going on?
Oh my God. There's been some crazy things in the last 200 episodes. But no, I've had people that have come into open houses that I've been hosting where they're like, oh yeah, we sold our house a year ago because we thought for sure that the sky was going to fall and the market was going to crash. And then now they're living in a rental and they're like not getting back in the game. And I'm like, well, now what are you doing? You could barely afford that move up house before. What are you going to do now? Yeah. You going to just be a renter for the rest of your life now? After you've been a homeowner for like 15, 20 years. So it's really interesting to see how and why people are not getting into the real estate game.
And how it's like directly affecting agents, right? Like we're seeing that impact on agents.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that played into things in 2024 is that selling real estate took skill again. It wasn't just easy. Like all during COVID, there were so many agents that got into the business, like an insane, big, huge flood into the business because everyone's like, oh my God, this is a place like get rich in real estate. And it's true. Like a lot of people didn't learn a lot of skills and they were able to make a decent living in real estate. But in the last couple of years, there's been like the mass exodus out of real estate and also out of mortgages. I had coffee with a lender yesterday and we were talking about the stats. Like 4 years ago, there were over like close to 400,000 mortgage professionals across the country. And every year that number is declining. And now we're down to like 98,000 mortgage professionals. So like 4 years ago, it went from like 400,000 and now we're down to like 98,000.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So I don't know specifically what those numbers are in real estate, but it's got to be really similar. We knew the stat a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
How many people had turned their licenses back in. It was a shocking
Every
statistic.
month it was so high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of agents, that really didn't try hard to learn the business, really didn't go and put forth any effort to build a brand and to really have this be like a career of longevity. I think those agents really suffered in 2024. If they're still in the business, I think they really suffered. And because they haven't built a database, they don't have reoccurring clients. They're just hoping that online leads will sustain them. And that's just...
They can sustain you for a little bit if someone's willing to pay for that. And then you can go ahead and, if you know how to work it, but did you know how to work it and that kind of thing too.
Well, and a lot of teams cut back on a lot of that stuff because it's a humongous expense.
Yes.
And if agents aren't converting leads, then it's like, why are we paying for this? Let's go back to like tried and true type stuff. So yeah, I think some areas of the business, it was really evident as to why things were lower, but then there's other like nuancy things to it.
Yeah, and there's definitely been minutes or hours of like agents sort of saying the same thing over and over and over again that someone else is saying and not taking their own spin on it. So really not defining your brand voice, defining your brand, like figuring out what makes you unique and then really taking that as your superpower to move forward and to serve your clients. So there's like a disconnect there. Definitely.
We have so many old podcasts that talk about like building your brand and finding your brand voice. Like go back and search out some of those if you like want more info in that area. So
something interesting, Beth, this last year was like, because you've talked about this, was like sharing wins and even doing this episode. Like, do we do an episode to share? Like we won last year. Like we did great. Do we do this episode? Is it going to like, are people going to take it negatively? That kind of thing. Right. But the reality is we did have a good year. And like, can you chat a little bit about like trying to navigate celebrating having a good year, versus when you're surrounded by some that aren't, like what that looks like?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because last year was the first year that I had picked a word of the year. So like Christy's been picking words of the year forever. And last year was the first year that I did it and I picked the word abundance. And I've talked about this in other episodes and I talk about this on social where I was like saying my word of the year and then adding all these caveats to it. Like, well, abundance just doesn't mean just getting rich. Abundance in all areas of life. And then I'm like, whoa, you got to stop saying that. But also that kind of went hand in hand with celebrating the wins. Because I'd be talking to agents and I had a conversation and I'm not going to name names because then people will know exactly who I'm talking about. I was having a conversation with someone like near the end of the year and this person's like, oh man, I had like a really bad year and like everyone that I've been talking to had a really bad year. And I'm like, oh, interesting. And I said, I have the best year I've ever had in the business. And this person was like, what? And totally shocked. And like all throughout the year, I was finding myself like at the beginning of 2024, when like our year started really like taking off, I felt myself like playing small. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stop doing that. Cause then I don't want the universe to like not reward me for the hard work. And like, well, I mean, if she wants to play small, we'll play small. And I'm like, I don't want that to be my reality. Like we're putting in the work, we're doing all the things. So like, why would we not be rewarded with like a really fabulous year? I mean, we've been laying the groundwork on building this brand we're on our 5th year now.
5th year, and there's something to be said about once you start to like tell yourself a story, it becomes a reality.
Yep.
And We've also talked about many times, earlier episodes especially, you've shared how like your business doesn't have to be determined by like the season of it, right? So like if it's a season in real estate where many aren't doing well, or it's like a low year, seller's year, buyer's year, market crashes, all these kinds of things, right? You should be able to operate your business at least some level of success throughout any market. And that's also part of it too, like believing that your business is so susceptible to like fall in a year where it's not like COVID. That's crazy. Yeah. Right. Like that was an anomaly. That's not going to continue to happen. Hopefully, right? Yeah. Like, and it's like you have to be able to navigate the waters of like every season of real estate, which, you know, you've been doing this for a minute. So you've seen a lot, but you've also had hard years, right? So like figuring out how to make it still functional and still successful throughout everything is the key. And we've been laying that foundation for quite a while.
Yeah. And I think so much of the hard has been in my head rather than actually what's happening in the market. It's like my mindset around what's happening rather than what's actually happening.
Yeah. We can get so wrapped up in telling ourselves a story, right? Gosh, guilty of that myself a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So this was our best year yet. So let's chat. What did we do differently? Or I should say 2024 is our best year yet. Yeah. What did we do differently?
I would say we got really crystal clear on the team. We made a decision to like kind of reorg the team early on in 2024, and it was the best thing that we could have done.
Yes.
All of a sudden, the whole leadership team, all of us on the leadership team were like, oh, wow. Changing a couple of things here and there all of a sudden freed up so much emotional and physical and everything space in our lives. And we're like, let's just put our heads down and sell houses.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best things we could have done to like start last year off on the right foot.
I couldn't agree more. And just that energy shift and then that space that opened up when we did that, you know, staying focused, like we could all get into our roles and be consistent with what we needed to do instead of getting derailed or like sidetracked because there was some sort of issue going on that was really not relevant to moving the business forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. We did, like, everybody knew, like, what their seat and their role was. Like, we always talk about, like, the seats on the bus. There's that book called The Energy Bus. I love that book. I read it a number of years ago. But, like, everybody knows, like, what their role is on the team. And everybody like stayed in their lane with their role and everybody just executed at a really high level. And it was really impactful.
It's really interesting once you remove distractions that aren't how that can happen too. And obviously like not perfect process, right? But really impactful for us in 2024.
We really went hard on implementing and like creating the brand 5 years ago.
We did.
Yeah. And I feel like staying super, super consistent is just like paying back in tenfold now. Yeah,
you know, this is something where when it comes to building a brand, and gosh, you've heard us talk about this so much. If you want to go back to episode 62 and 63, building a real estate brand, those would be really good resources if you want to kind of refresh on this. But really, 5 years ago, we made a decision to start working together and what that was going to look like. And we took smaller steps to start, but we really built that foundation. And we did the work early on to really make sure your brand pillars and everything that we were doing was going to make sense for you, for your clients, for business. And not to say we haven't shifted things or tried new things or anything like that. Of course we are. Like every month, even every year, we're doing that. But really laying that foundation and like the slow and steady, like we're really consistent and making it work and making it make sense. You know what? This brings me back to when we think of brand voice, obviously, like really fine tuning that. When we think of our consistency with our marketing, with our email strategy, not chasing, even though many times some on the team just naturally, even myself, you want to chase that new shiny thing, you know, follow that new trend. Ask yourself, is it worth it? Right? Like, of course we've like, are paying attention to what's going on. But is this worth our time to make this big change for a month, for 6 months, that kind of thing? So really staying consistent with our messaging, with our brand voice, how we're putting ourselves out there, how we serve our clients, like getting consistent processes in place and fine tuning. Like this year, we're really talking about fine tuning things even more. And so there's all this back end stuff that's going on. And you give everyone reasons to trust you, right? They know, like you, and now they have so many reasons to trust you. And so once you build that and you are consistent with it, it does just pay off. And the beauty with this, with building a brand, and also the flip side of that, the hard part is sometimes it can take a minute, right? It can take a minute to start off. Like, we want to see results right away. We want all that to pay off right away. I've been doing this for 2 weeks. Why am I not getting all the calls? Like that kind of thing. And especially realtors, like, super guilty of that, right? This industry in general, and many of us in general in small business. And the consistency of the building the brand and executing it at the level we do, and removing distractions, is a large piece of why we have success now. It is not everything by any means. There's the day-to-day work and everything else involved, but that is such a huge part of it. So it also brings me back to thinking a conversation I had with Allison Burns from LA Marie Design, and talking about the visuals, right? Like, the visuals part of your branding. So like, I talked about brand voice and all of that in the marketing, but like the visuals. And she's shared, people get so bored with their visuals. They want to change them up all the time. They want to go in Canva and, I'm going to pick this color this month, or in 6 months, I'm bored with this, I want to do this, or I like this color because it looks pretty on someone else's grid. And you're constantly changing that. And Canva has given us access to so much, right? Which is cool. And it's a great tool. And regardless if you're using Canva or something else, but that consistency, when you're all over the place or you're constantly changing, that trust is so hard. That link is missing, right? You're not linking it together. So that is also something that we've stayed consistent with. It might be a little more boring, right, to us, maybe sometimes for executing, but it's working and it makes sense, right? So like, making decisions if we make a decision to change something, it's coming from a place of, does this make sense for our business, and is it going to move us forward, or are we just bored with this, right? Make the decision that makes sense to move the business forward.
I love that. Another shift we've seen in the last couple of years is like who our client base is.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, like, people just have like a natural need for housing, right? You need a roof over your head, but we're seeing more clients that are buying homes because they need to, not because it's just a want. That was during COVID, when interest rates were like 2% and 3%. People are like, well, hell yeah, why not? I'm just going to like buy a bigger house. Not that I need to, but like, I can get a house twice the size for the same monthly payment as what I'm currently paying. But it's shifted so much more, like the divorce, people passing away, people having kids, relocation, like upsizers, downsizers, which we love to call like right sizers. So much of that has been the core base of our business the last couple of years. And that really rang true in 2024.
And so much of it's coming from our database that we already have, and like friends of friends, friends of family, word of mouth, networking, and not online leads. Yeah,
I feel like I started this last year, is that like kind of just like thinking through my database and like conversations that I've had with people. So I was kind of like running like a little tally of like, okay, who are people that have sort of like mentioned to me in passing that like they'd love to buy a house or sell a house, or who has to do both. And so then I'm like, okay, how can we be more strategic and intentional about like staying in front of those people that have already mentioned to me that there's a need or a want, and how do we like stay in front of them? And so then Carrie and I took my little cheat sheet out of my phone and really got like all like strategic notes and everything put into our CRM. And we did that again this year. And it's really awesome to see like, okay, this is all like projected business for 2025. It doesn't even include people that just come out of the woodwork. Like this week, I had a past client that they've never come to any past event. They've never come to any events we've ever hosted. Like when I've reached out to them, they never respond to anything. She reached out of the blue. Hey, we'd love to see another unit in our current building. And I'm like, all right, like, tell me more. She's like, we're going to keep our current unit and we'd like to buy a rental. Okay. So we're seeing properties on Tuesday. And it's like, that's amazing. Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, and it shifted. This success of 2024 shifted into January. We were already seeing like busy January, like really
not the norm.
Not the norm for many, not the norm even for us, every year. So this is really like putting the work in and doing it is actually paying off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing is like we aren't, we don't spend $10,000 a month on a Zillow account. You know, we're not like a Zillow Flex partner. And I know that's a really prestigious thing to have. And yeah, I get it. But online leads are really hard to convert. Unless you're really skilled and trained at them, it's definitely a skill. So like, why would you just not go hard and go after business of people that already know, like, and trust you? Like, that's why I think it's so nuts when people don't go, don't like continue to build a brand after the sale with clients they've already had like an incredible interaction with. So like, that's what we've gone really hard on. That's why pop buys and client events and client touches all throughout the year. That's why all of that is so important to us, because like, that's where our business is coming from.
Yeah. And like showing up like every day or most days and being consistent, and like, they know that they can trust you. They know that you're the knowledge, right? They know they can come to you. They want to come to you.
Yeah. Well, another thing is like your thoughts that you have in your head and the things that you say out loud, like you can really manifest it.
Oh my gosh,
so our house, like it's a joke, but it's like totally true. Mark's like, my throat's starting to feel scratchy. I'm like, what do we say? He's like, I am healthy and strong and I feel great. I'm like, no, say it with conviction. So like a couple weeks ago, we were both like, we were kind of like on the verge. I'm like, if I lean into this, I could go down hard, and I would have been probably down for at least the weekend, but probably the whole week. And I was like, no, I am healthy and strong and I feel great. And Mark was like, I don't feel good. I'm like, Mark, who was sick all weekend and who was fine? I was not sick. Fill in the blank about who you think was sick all weekend laying in bed. I'm like, the power of your words and your thoughts can make or break things. If you're like, oh, it's a really bad year, there's no business and this is hard and blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, your year's probably going to suck.
Honestly, too, like you're giving yourself a pass, because if everyone else around you is saying it's hard and you're like, it's hard, you don't have to do the work then.
Right.
And that's just giving yourself a pass. So like, can you get past that and say, I'm having a hard time right now. That does not mean my year is going to be hard. Right. So like, say that and then move forward. What can I do? Like, what can you do instead of this is happening to me? Like shifting that mindset. Like their reality does not have to become your reality.
1,000%. Yeah. Speaking of reality, honestly, we could have had a better year. Like, I'm not going to lie. And I've said this. I'm like, we had an awesome year, but could it have been better? 100%. Could I have lead generated more? 100%. Yeah. But it was a great year, and I'm not going to like beat myself up for like what didn't happen, but could it have been better had I leaned in harder? For sure. And
it's a great question to ask yourself too. Like, were there things that I missed if I did have a really hard year? Yeah. Like where were the misses, and then how can I make it so I don't miss them in 2025? And that's really what we're doing, Beth, right now, is we're really fine-tuning processes at the BPR experience and making sure that we miss the least.
100%. Yeah, I mean, we don't talk about politics on the podcast and that sort of thing. But honestly, at the end of the day, it does not matter who's in the office, in the White House. It doesn't matter. None of that matters in terms of like, can I have a successful year or not? Like, if that's what you're banking on for your success, I think you're always going to struggle.
Yeah.
I think you need to figure out how to position your business that if interest rates are not great, how do you get business? If the candidate in the office is not the one that you chose, how can I still survive and thrive if it switches from a seller's market to a buyer's market? Or if it's a seller's market and you strictly work with buyers? Like, all of that can't be your excuse to not be successful. Like, okay, this is the reality, and how am I going to thrive regardless of that?
I mean, none of this is new. Real estate is constantly changing. It's constantly changing. Yeah. And you need to, if you're going to have a successful business, you have to be able to change with it.
Yeah.
Right. So that is something that we have seen and will continue to see as we move forward. And just having that mindset of, I can do this, even if it's hard, I can do this in any year. And like, what can I do to make that happen? And like really focusing there.
Yep. So we've got some 5 actionable items. Let's jump into those.
Okay. So if you really want to have an awesome 2025, These are 5 things that will set you up for success and really like help you take off.
I love it. Number 1, identify your pipeline. Like, who are you having conversations with? Who are you thinking about? Like, how can you take a more proactive approach instead of a reactive? And like I said, I started making that list on my phone before we transferred it to the CRM. But then like, adding the prompts to like, oh, reach out to these people and like start that conversation. And like, what processes do you have in place for being able to convert that business?
Yeah, like to really support you in this. Yeah. And head back to episode 182 that Beth recorded an episode about what worked in her business and what didn't. That's a really good one too. Number 2, very solid and consistent email marketing
campaign. This is your love language.
Head back to episode 144, 10 email topics to send right now if you're just totally stuck. If you're just totally stuck, head back there. Maybe it'll help you brainstorm some ideas of what you can send to your clients. Like getting consistent with what is happening with TikTok. I mean, honestly, we don't even know what's going to happen with TikTok. By the time this episode comes out, it can be totally different. So I'm not even going to say what's happening with TikTok right now. We all just know a lot of things are happening with TikTok. Let's just leave it at that. Yeah. It's such a great example of how you don't own your followers. You just don't own them. And so where do they live? Like getting them on your email list, and once they're on there, like making sure that you're serving them at a level you can reach them as often as you want if they're on your email list.
Well, and the ROI, what is it? Geez. I don't even know what that number is.
$5 million for every subscriber. I'm only kidding.
I mean, it's like seriously like a 400% ROI or something crazy like that. Emails are totally the way to go. Number 3, stay consistent and relevant on social media. Serve, but don't be self-serving. Like when you're posting, like, how is this making someone else's life better? Am I posting just to post, or am I posting to make an impact or educate or like, yeah.
Yeah, and am I not seeing results on one platform, so I'm just done with it, that kind of thing. Head back to episode 144, Why Facebook Remains a Vital Marketing Platform. I think that episode will really spark some ideas for you.
It's a good episode.
It is a good episode. All right, number 4, finding people who share the same positive mindset and going really hard on building that network. We talk a lot about who you surround yourself with matters, and it's so, so true. We did an episode 150, Building Relationships in Real Estate, where we brought in other agents and like chatted all about community and what that means for your business.
And number 5, always stay in growth mindset and always be learning. Head back to episode 154, and it's an abundance versus scarcity mindset in business and in life.
That was a big one.
That was a really good one.
So bonus.
We love the bonus ones.
We love the bonus. Give yourself some grace if you're having an off week, an off month. Hopefully it's not a whole month, but like don't let it spiral off into a month, right? Yeah. Like you're having an off week. Okay. Reset. What can I do now? Do things that get you back on track quickly. Put your energy there.
It's a great mic drop.
It's a great mic drop. Okay. So 2025 can be an incredibly successful year for you. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. We are cheering you on. And remember, until next time, bus bench babes,
keep your face off a bus bench
and keep being the badass boss babe that you are. Okay, girls, are you feeling as inspired as we are? We're over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of the Girl, Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast.
If you want more, head over to girlgetyourfaceoffabusbench.com for show notes and more episodes. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. They mean the world to us, and they're what keep us going.
Girl, thanks for being here.